my channel. Today I will be sharing with you NCERT Class 9 History, Section-1, Chapter-1, The French Revolution, Part 2, The Outbreak of the Revolution. Taxation and the Estates General under the old regime. The monarch could not impose taxes unilaterally. He had to seek approval from the Estates General. The Estates General was a political body representing the three estates. The Estates General was basically an assembly of the three estates in front of the king. Only the king could decide when to call a session. The last one had been in 1614. That was 170 years before, approximately. The meeting of the 5 May 1789. Louis XVI called the Estates General to approve new taxes. The meeting was held at Versailles with a grand setup. The representation of the first estate, the clergy, was done by 300 representatives. The second estate, nobility, also sent 300 representatives. The third estate, though, commoners, had sent 600 representatives. The third estate had to stand at the back while the first two were seated. Only wealthier and educated men of the third estate, peasants, artisans, and women, were excluded. Only these men who were wealthy and were educated were sent to the estates general meeting. Around 40,000 letters of grievances were submitted by the third estate. Conflict over voting procedures. Traditional voting, one vote per estate, regardless of population size. The third estate demanded one vote per member was more democratic, based on Rousseau's idea from the social contract. When the king refused this demand, the third estate walked out in protest. Formation of the National Assembly and Revolutionary Uprising. June and August 1789. Formation of the National Assembly. 20th June 1789. The Third Estate declared themselves the National Assembly, claiming to represent the whole French nation. They met at an indoor tennis court in Versailles and took the tennis court oath, as it is known today, vowing not to disperse until a constitution was drafted to limit the king's powers. Now, there were two key leaders from this time, Mirabeau and Abbé Sieyès. Mirabeau was originally from a noble background but opposed the feudal privileges. And he also published a journal and gave fiery speeches. Abbé Sieyès, who was originally a priest and a political thinker, wrote the influential pamphlet What is the Third Estate? Rising unrest across France. A severe winter led to bad harvest, causing a rise in bread prices. Bakers hoarded supplies, leading to angry crowds of women storming shops. The king sent troops into Paris, increasing the tension. A mob stormed the Bastille, a symbol of royal tyranny, demanding arms and ammunition. Seen as a turning point in the French Revolution that we learned about in the previous video. Peasant revolts in the countryside. Rumors spread that landlords hired brigands to destroy crops. Frightened peasants attacked chateaux. Chateau is basically a royal manor where nobles lived. Frightened peasants attacked chateaux, burnt documents of feudal dues, and looted grain. Many nobles fled to other countries throughout Europe. The king recognizes the National Assembly. Under pressure, Louis XVI recognized the National Assembly and accepted the idea that his powers would be limited by the constitution. Abolition of feudalism, the night of 4th August 1789. The assembly abolished this feudal system of obligations and taxes. The clergy gave up its privileges and tithes. The tax to be paid to the church was abolished. The church lands were confiscated by the National Assembly, giving the government assets worth at least 2 billion livres. This acquisition of assets also helped the government to delay the debt of 7 billion livres by a great margin. Now, these are some important dates. 1774 is when the Louis XVI becomes King of France and faces an empty treasury and growing discontent within the society of the old regime, pre 1789. 1789 is when the convocation of the Estates General happens. The Third Estate forms the National Assembly, the Bastille is stormed, peasant revolts in the countryside. 3. 1791. A constitution is framed to limit the powers of the king and to guarantee basic rights to all human beings. 1792 through 1793. France becomes a republic, the king is beheaded, and the overthrow of the Jacobin Republic also occurs. After which a directory rules France. In 1804, Napoleon becomes Emperor of France and annexes large parts of Europe. In 1815, Napoleon is finally defeated in the Battle of Waterloo. Now, let's take a look at this map where we see the spread of the Great Fear. Now, the green is the regions where the Great Fear, the peasant revolts, have still not reached, and the red areas in Normandy and near Alsace are the areas where the early agrarian revolts occurred. The arrows point in the directions where the great fear spread. Now, a chateau, plural chateaux, a castle or stately residence belonging to a king or a nobleman. A manor, an estate consisting of the lord's lands and his mansion together. France becomes a constitutional monarchy. The National Assembly completed the draft of the Constitution in 1791. Its main object was to limit the powers of the monarch. These powers, instead of being concentrated in the hands of one person, were now separated and assigned to different institutions: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. This made France a constitutional monarchy. Now, let's take a look at this map where let us start with this line here: active citizens. These were citizens entitled to vote, about 4 million of a population of 28 million, only a seventh. Now, there were another class of citizens, passive citizens, who had no voting rights, about 3 million men, women, children, and youth below 25 years of age. Now, active citizens would vote for two things. One, they would vote for the judiciary, a judge, after which they would elect electors, 50,000 men of 4 million, who would then go on to vote for a National Assembly of 745 members, who would control the king, and also the king had the power to veto the National Assembly. They also controlled the ministers of the king's cabinet. Power structure under the new constitution. The Constitution of 1791 established a constitutional monarchy, making lawmaking powers were given to the National Assembly completely. The assembly was chosen by an indirect system of election, as we have just studied in the previous slide. The citizens voted for electors who then voted the assembly members. The voting rights and citizenship. Now, active citizens, only men over 25 years old who paid taxes equal to at least 3 days of a laborer's wage. They had the right to vote. The passive citizens, the rest of the men and all women, they had no voting rights. Electors and the assembly membership. To become an elector or a member of the assembly, a man had to belong to the highest tax bracket. This system favored the wealthy, limiting political participation to the privileged among commoners. The constitution began with a declaration of the rights of man and citizen. Rights such as the right to life, freedom of speech, freedom of opinion, equality before the law were established as natural and inalienable rights, that is, they belong to each human being by birth and could not be taken away at any cost. It was the duty of the state to protect each citizen's natural rights. Here is a picture showing the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. Now let's take a look at these political symbols. The broken chain. Chains were used to fetter slaves, capture them. A broken chain stands for the act of becoming free. A scepter, a symbol of royal power, that is the king's power. The bundle of rods or fasces. One rod can be easily broken, but not an entire bundle. This represented the strength in unity. The eye within a triangle radiating light. The all seeing eye stands for knowledge. The rays of the sun will drive away the clouds of ignorance. Snake biting its tail to form a ring, symbol of eternity. A ring neither beginning nor ending. The red Frisian cap, a cap worn by a slave upon becoming free. The blue, white, red woman, the national colors of France, are represented here by her red shirt, her blue cloak and skirt, and her white sleeves. The winged woman, personification of the law. The law tablet. The law is same for all, and all are equal before it, without any exceptions. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment if possible. It would really help me out a lot if you were to subscribe to my channel. If you have found this video helpful, thank you.